What if a child, just 8 years old, walked into a courtroom alone and changed everything? This isn't just a story about money or power. It's about truth, betrayal, and the courage of a little boy no one saw coming. Stay with us till the very end, because what happens will shock you, inspire you, and make you question what justice really means. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that move your heart and open your eyes. Nobody knew the second wife even existed. Not the media, not the billionaire's friends, and certainly not his first wife. But that secret, hidden away in a quiet coastal mansion far from the public eye, came with a heartbeat. A child, an 8-year-old boy with his father's sharp eyes and his mother's fragile patience. And all he ever wanted was to be called son by the man who gave him life. But his father, the billionaire, he didn't even blink when the child begged for his name. It all started the day the boy, Rami, turned 8. He had never known public birthday parties or expensive toys like his father's other children. No red carpet treatment. No golden balloons floating above a marble cake. Just a small candle on a cupcake baked by a mother who gave up her dreams for a man who never really chose her. That morning, Rami had looked at the single candle and whispered one wish before blowing it out. I want my father to call me his son. His mother, Layla, froze. The color drained from her face, but she smiled anyway. You are his son, Rami, she whispered, brushing his hair back. No, he said softly. Not if he doesn't say it. Layla never planned for things to end up this way. She had met the billionaire, Idris Kadim, when she was just 25 and interning at one of his global architecture firms. He was older, charming, and already married to his first wife, Selena, the heiress of a European shipping empire. But Selena was in Europe, and Idris was in Dubai, and power doesn't always follow promises. Their affair was reckless, desperate, and eventually silent. Layla got pregnant. Idris panicked. He didn't want to destroy his empire. So he offered her a deal, a house, a comfortable life, and everything she needed, as long as she disappeared from the media and never said a word about their child. Privately, he married her in a small legal ceremony in the Maldives, something untraceable. Layla took the deal. Not for the money, but for the hope that one day Idris would change. That he would look at Rami and see more than a mistake. He never did. 8 years later, Rami wasn't dumb. He was smart, observant, and surprisingly mature for a child who had spent more time with books than people. That evening, when Layla tucked him in bed, he asked a question she never saw coming. Mama, if he won't say I'm his son, can I ask someone else to make him say it? Who? She asked, laughing nervously. A judge, Rami replied. Layla stared at him. For a long time, Rami wasn't joking. He had been watching court videos, reading basic law books, even using her phone at night when she was asleep to research children's rights. That was the moment she knew. He wasn't going to be silenced. Not like she had been. The very next day, while most children were watching cartoons or building Lego castles, Rami was preparing a letter. A letter addressed to the family division of the Dubai Civil Court. It was short, honest, and piercing. My name is Rami Laith. I am 8 years old. My father is Idris Kadim. He says he is not, but my mother says she is his wife. I have never had his last name. He does not talk to me. I want to ask the judge if I can be his son, and if he can tell my father that he cannot keep pretending I don't exist. Layla never saw the letter. Rami didn't want her to. He dropped it off himself, slipped it into the court's mailbox with trembling hands and tearful eyes. The court did something nobody expected. They took it seriously. Weeks passed. Then came a letter, a formal invitation for a private hearing. Confidential, sealed, marked urgent. Layla froze when she read it. It was real. And now, Idris Kadim, the untouchable, unreachable, carefully curated public figure, was being summoned to acknowledge the child he buried behind silence. When the letter reached Idris's primary residence in Dubai, Selena, his first wife, opened it. She dropped the glass she was holding. The sound shattered through the marble halls. Who the hell is Rami Laith? She asked, holding the paper up like it was poison. Idris stared at the name for a long time. Then he lied. No idea. But inside, He knew this was the moment his empire would begin to crack. The courtroom was small, plain, cold. Rami stood next to his mother, holding her hand with a grip stronger than his age should allow. Idris entered behind his lawyer, dressed in an expensive suit with sunglasses on, as if pretending not to see his own child would change reality. Rami didn't cry. He didn't beg. He only looked his father in the eye and asked one question. "Why don't you want me?" The room went still. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes but no tolerance for cowardice, leaned forward. "Mr. Kadim, is this your son?" Idris's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we reject the claim. There is no evidence." "Sit down," the judge snapped. "I asked him." Idris looked at Layla, then at Rami, then at the floor. "No," he said. Rami said nothing. He only reached into his tiny backpack and pulled out something that made the room collectively hold its breath. A toothbrush. A simple, blue child's toothbrush. "My DNA is on this," he said, his voice steady. "You can test it." The judge stared. Idris's lawyer tried to object. The judge slammed her gavel. "We'll test it." It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of paparazzi sniffing around the court building, suspecting something but not yet knowing. 3 weeks where Rami still held out hope. Then came the result. Positive. 99.9999% match. Idris Kadim was the father. A second hearing was scheduled. This time, Layla hired a lawyer. A good one. And this time, the courtroom was full. Media had caught wind of it. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters buzzed with speculation. Inside the room, it was quiet. The judge didn't waste time. "Mr. Kadim, you lied. You knowingly denied a child that was yours, despite having married his mother in secret. You have 2 legal wives, a child from each, and an empire built on the image of a perfect family. That image is shattered." Idris said nothing. The judge turned to Rami. "You asked for your father to call you his son. I can't make him say it, but I can make the world know you are." Layla broke down crying. But Rami wasn't finished. He raised his hand. "Your Honor," he said, "I also want what his other children have. My mom told me they will get money one day when he dies. I want that too." The court froze. Idris finally spoke. "He's a child. He doesn't know what he's saying." "I do," Rami said. "You married my mom. That means I'm like your other kids. I should get half. Or I want the court to tell me why I'm not allowed." The judge didn't answer. Not yet. But in that moment, the narrative changed. This wasn't just about acknowledgement anymore. This was about inheritance. And the empire Idris had built brick by brick was suddenly shaking under the weight of an 8-year-old boy who refused to be erased. The news spread like wildfire. One headline, 2 lines, and the empire cracked. Billionaire Idris Kadim faces secret son in court. 8-year-old demands inheritance rights. Within hours, talk shows, online platforms, and international media dug deep into Idris's life. Hidden wife, secret marriage, concealed child. The world now knew what Idris had spent a decade hiding. And yet, through it all, Rami stood quiet. He didn't smile at the cameras. He didn't pose. He didn't chase fame. He just wanted the truth to live. What he didn't expect was what came next. Selena, Idris's first wife, the woman who had spent years walking red carpets and managing his public image, filed for legal separation within days of the scandal. But not before delivering her own legal bomb. Through her lawyers, she submitted a 200-page affidavit detailing everything. Mr. Kadim knowingly withheld knowledge of his second marriage from me and from our family trust. I have reason to believe that financial misrepresentation occurred, and I request that all assets, including offshore accounts and trust arrangements, be re-examined by the court. Idris wasn't just dealing with a custody case anymore. He was being dragged into a financial reckoning. And at the center of it all was an 8-year-old with a toothbrush and a heart big enough to burn down empires. The second hearing was set. This time it was public. Idris's legal team pushed to keep it sealed, but the judge ruled against it. "You built your name in public," she said. "Now, the public watches." Layla sat on the left. Idris sat on the right. Rami, small and serious in a navy blue suit, sat between his mother and their lawyer. But today they brought something new. Proof of neglect. Layla's lawyer played a voicemail. one recorded months before the trial. Layla had saved it, unsure if it meant anything. Now it meant everything. Don't call me again about the boy. He's not my concern. I paid you to stay quiet. Don't ruin my life over some accident. It was Idris's voice, crystal clear. The courtroom was stunned. The judge removed her glasses slowly. Mr. Kadim, is this your voice? Idris's lawyer tried to object. That was private communication. The judge cut him off. The voice. Idris said nothing. Silence. The judge didn't need an answer. The courtroom echoed with whispers. Reporters scrambled to type. Cameras outside caught the tension through the courtroom's glass walls. Then came financial disclosures. Layla's lawyer introduced evidence from an independent auditor showing that Idris had moved nearly $22 million from his personal accounts into offshore trusts just 3 months before Rami's paternity case began. Asset shielding, the lawyer said. He knew the storm was coming. Idris leaned forward. I didn't move anything for that reason. The judge raised an eyebrow. Then why move it right after a child filed a case against you? Idris hesitated. Business restructuring. Coincidence, the judge asked. Rami, still silent, whispered something to his lawyer. The lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client would like to say something. The court nodded. Rami stood. No script. No paper. Just truth. I don't want to ruin anyone. I don't want more money than anyone else. I just want my father to say he sees me, that I'm not a mistake, that I'm not a secret. But if he won't say it, then I want the court to make sure I can live a life like his other kids. I don't need a jet. I just want a name. And fairness. The judge took a long pause, then made a declaration that changed everything. Pending further review, the court acknowledges Rami Laith as the biological child of Idris Kadim and recognizes his eligibility for equitable inheritance under the same provisions provided to the defendant's other legal children. The court freezes all of Mr. Kadim's estate until further review is conducted, including all trust and offshore holdings. The courtroom exploded, but the fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Idris filed a counterclaim. He accused Layla of manipulating the child and using him for financial gain. His legal team produced photos of Layla shopping with luxury bags, driving a new car, and renting a larger villa. They framed her as a gold digger, a woman scorned, a mother using her son. But Layla wasn't shaken. In the third hearing, she stood and told her side. I gave up everything for him. I took money not because I was greedy, but because he offered it to silence me. I stayed quiet because I thought it was best for my son. But I was wrong. I taught my child that silence was survival. He taught me that truth is better. Rami clutched her hand tightly. Then came the moment that no one expected. Selena, Idris's first wife, entered the courtroom as a witness. She had never met Rami. She had never spoken to Layla. But she had watched every hearing, read every paper, seen every video. And now, she had something to say. Your Honor, I was lied to. I was humiliated. But I watched that boy stand with more strength than any adult I've known. I saw in his eyes the man Idris pretends to be. My lawyers have reviewed the trust documents. I'm willing to split my children's share with Rami, because what kind of mother would I be if I let another child be erased for the sake of convenience? The courtroom froze. Idris looked like he had been punched in the chest. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Kadim. Your statement will be added to the final review. It was a turning point. Suddenly, this wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a legacy fight. People across the country began writing letters to the court, sending in drawings for Rami, creating videos, praising his courage. He wasn't just a hidden child anymore. He was a symbol for all the children erased by wealth, forgotten in silence, buried beneath luxury. But then came the attack. A private video surfaced online, footage from inside Layla's home. Grainy, but clear enough. It showed Layla crying, saying she wished the case would just bring Idris down. Idris's lawyers leapt on it. They painted Layla as vindictive. The court paused proceedings. An emergency review was scheduled, but Rami wasn't shaken. He had one final card to play, one that nobody expected. He walked into the courtroom with a small envelope. Inside was a drawing. 2 stick figures. One labeled me. The other labeled Dad. The figures weren't holding hands. They were standing apart, but underneath them was a note. Even if you don't want me, I'll always be your son, and I'll still be proud of it. The judge asked where it came from. Rami said he drew it the night he sent the letter to court. He had kept it all this time. The courtroom was silent. Even Idris couldn't speak. For the first time, the man who built towers from steel looked like a man made of paper. The judge dismissed the video as manipulated and irrelevant. The source was unknown. Forensic teams traced it back to a hacked security camera, illegally obtained, inadmissible. And then the final decision was announced. The courtroom lights never seemed brighter than the morning of the final hearing. Television trucks lined the streets outside. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder in the August heat, waiting for one decision, one truth. Would a child born of secrecy win justice in front of the world? Inside, the atmosphere was electric, tense, unbreathable. Rami sat in the front row, legs swinging off the bench, back straight, eyes forward. His small fingers clutched a pen, blue ink, cap missing. Not a toy, a tool, a symbol of everything he had written, everything he had said. Truth in handwriting. His mother sat beside him, her face pale, jaw tight. Behind them, rows of journalists, lawyers, and observers, all witnesses to the battle between a boy's voice and a billionaire's. Silence. And then the judge entered. Everyone stood. The gavel dropped, and the silence that followed felt like the breath of justice itself. This court has considered the evidence over 6 weeks. Genetic proof, marital documentation, financial activity, personal testimony, character references, and the courageous presence of a child who has shown more maturity than many grown men in this room. She paused, letting her gaze drift toward Idris Kadim. He didn't blink. This court acknowledges, without doubt, that Mr. Idris Kadim is the biological father of Rami Laith, born from his second legal marriage to Layla Rafi. Therefore, the child is a legal heir under applicable family law. Whispers swept the room like wind. Rami didn't flinch. This court further concludes that the defendant knowingly withheld acknowledgement of his child for personal and reputational protection, depriving the child of both emotional connection and financial parity. The judge adjusted her robe. Accordingly, the court orders the immediate and permanent addition of Rami Laith to the list of legal heirs to Mr. Kadim's estate. He is entitled to the same protections, educational trust, inheritance benefits, and estate representation as the defendant's other children. A thunderbolt, an empire cracked in real time. But the judge wasn't finished. Due to intentional misrepresentation and suppression of assets by Mr. Kadim, this court is freezing 30% of his declared and undeclared financial portfolio to ensure equitable future provision to Rami Laith and to support damages owed for emotional neglect. Idris's jaw tightened. The lawyer beside him dropped his pen. Layla gasped. She didn't know whether to cry or faint. But Rami? Rami did something no one expected. He stood up, turned around, and walked straight to his father. The court guards tensed, but Rami didn't flinch. He stopped 2 feet from Idris, looked up into the man's cold, unreadable eyes, and said, softly, "You still never said it." The courtroom held its breath, and for a second, a flicker, a shadow, a barely perceptible change, Idris's lip trembled. But he didn't speak. He didn't move. Rami nodded once and walked away. That was the last time they would stand that close. Outside, the world exploded. News sites crashed. Hashtags trended globally. Hashtag Rami Kadim became a symbol. Not just of a boy's victory, but of hidden truths, family betrayal, and the collapse of curated perfection. Idris left through a private exit, his face covered, his shoulders low. Selena, his first wife, filed the final papers 2 days later. Divorce. Full division of assets. Her public statement was sharp and devastating. If a man hides his own child, imagine what else he hides. His company's stocks began to fall. Investors pulled out. Brand partners terminated deals. Charities he sponsored issued apologies. Foundations removed his name. His face, once a banner of brilliance, was now a shadow across every screen. But for Rami, Everything was just beginning. A week after the verdict, he received a letter. It wasn't from his father. It was from a stranger. A woman in Morocco. A mother. Her daughter had been denied by her wealthy ex-partner. She wrote, "My daughter is 6. I never had the strength to fight, but your story made me believe I can." Another came from a boy in Malaysia, then a teen in India, then a woman in Nigeria. Rami had unknowingly ignited something bigger than his own fight. Layla tried to shield him from the flood, but it was too late. He was no longer just a boy with a case. He was a cause. But amid the storm, Rami remained grounded. He didn't move into a mansion. He didn't shop designer. He asked for one thing, a small dog and a big library. Layla laughed through tears the day she handed him a puppy, and Rami named him Truth. Reporters still swarmed. He gave no interviews. When asked why, he simply said, "Everything I had to say, I already said in court." But Idris? He was never the same. He tried to sue for defamation, failed. He tried to reclaim public favor, rejected. Even his boardroom allies began to distance themselves. And then came the final blow, the foundation collapse. One of his largest philanthropic organizations, the Kadim Global Education Fund, announced it would be renamed. To the public shock, it was now called the Rami Foundation for Justice and Voice. Selena, now chair of the board, had redirected the vision. We're now focused on advocacy for children silenced by power and fear. The room where Idris once ruled now bore the name of the son he tried to erase. But the story didn't end there. One evening, nearly 6 months after the final verdict, Rami sat on his balcony, sketching stars with chalk on black paper. Layla sat beside him. "Do you ever think he'll change?" she asked softly. Rami shrugged. "I don't need him to." She looked at him. "But do you want him to?" There was a long pause. Then Rami said something that would stay with her forever. "I wanted a father. I didn't know I could be one to myself." Layla blinked back tears. He was 8. And yet, somehow, infinite. 2 years later, the world still hadn't forgotten his name. Not because he asked for it. Not because he paraded in front of cameras or flashed wealth like others born in a legacy. But because he stood in court, not as a billionaire's son, not as a victim, but as a child who dared to demand recognition with nothing but a drawing and the truth. Rami Kadim Laith, the boy who rewrote what power looked like. By the time he turned 10, his name was on school walls, scholarship foundations, and children's advocacy programs across 4 continents. The Rami Foundation for Justice and Voice had funded over 1,200 legal cases for children born into silence, abandonment, and shame. But Rami? He never changed. Still the same kid. Same love for history books. Same blue pen. Same beat-up sneakers. He still shared a room with his mother, by choice. He still asked to walk to the market with her instead of sending staff. He still gave more than he kept. But one thing had changed. His name. Officially. Publicly. Permanently. Rami Laith Kadim. 3 names. 1 story. And somewhere in the shadows, the man who had refused to say them out loud was now forced to read them on buildings, scholarships, and global headlines. Idris Kadim's fall wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. His corporate empire survived, barely. But his reputation never recovered. Business magazines stopped listing him. Public figures stopped endorsing him. And his own board slowly replaced him as chairman with his eldest son from Selena. He retreated into privacy. No interviews. No statements. Only one confirmed move. He transferred 25% of his personal estate into an irrevocable trust in Rami's name. No explanation. No letter. No message. Just a transaction. Rami's lawyer informed him. Layla sat him down that night and asked carefully, "Do you want to know what he gave you?" Rami shook his head. "No, what?" He looked up. "Because I didn't fight for his money. I fought for my place." And that was enough. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done writing Rami's story. When he turned 11, a private school in Geneva invited him to speak, not as a victim, but as a voice, a speech, before hundreds of students from across the world. Layla hesitated. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said, "but I want to." And so he stood before them. No teleprompter. No note cards. Just that same blue pen in his pocket. And he spoke. When I was 8, I stood in a courtroom and asked a man to call me his son. He didn't. Not that day. Not since. But something happened when I stopped waiting for his voice to name me. I started hearing my own. I don't hate my father. I don't want revenge. I'm not proud of what he did, but I'm proud of what I did. Because sometimes silence is the heaviest chain in the world. And when you break it, the whole world can hear you. I didn't have a perfect childhood. I didn't have a big room, a driver, a famous last name. But I had a mother who loved me. I had a voice. And now, I have something more powerful than money. I have freedom. If you're out there, and someone told you that you're not enough because they're too afraid to admit you matter, remember this. You don't need their permission to exist. You are already real. When he finished, the room didn't clap at first. They stood. Every student, every teacher, every parent. Standing ovation. But far away, in a high-rise suite overlooking the edge of Dubai, a man watched that speech from a private live stream. Alone. Idris Kadim sat in a dark leather chair, the city glowing behind him. He didn't move. He didn't blink. And for the first time in 3 years, he whispered something aloud. To no one. To himself. That's my son. No one heard it. Except the walls. And maybe that was enough. Or maybe it wasn't. But Rami didn't need it anymore. He had stopped waiting. And the world had moved with him. 3 years later, Rami was 14. His foundation had grown larger than anyone expected. 23 countries. 48 full-time staff. Thousands of children helped. Layla had finally gone back to university. She earned her degree in law because she said watching her son fight taught her what real justice looked like. Rami traveled often. Quietly. No press. One winter evening, during a visit to a youth center in Casablanca, a little boy, maybe 6, ran up to him. His clothes were too small. His eyes too big. His smile crooked. Are you the boy who made the dad cry? Rami laughed softly. I don't know if I made him cry. My mom says you changed the rules. Rami knelt. No, he said. I just reminded them that kids have rules too. The boy hugged him. It was brief, but real. Later that night, as they rode back to the hotel, Layla looked at her son through the rearview mirror of their cab. She saw him staring out the window. Thoughtful. Calm. Do you ever wonder, she asked gently, what would have been like if he just said it the first time? Rami turned. No, he said. I wonder what would have happened if I never said it at all. Layla didn't respond. Because she didn't need to. Her son had become the thing his father never was. Unbreakable. Not because of revenge. Not because of wealth. Because of voice. Because of truth. Because of love that didn't beg or bargain, but stood. And stood loud. 10 years later, Rami stood at the opening of the Kadim Laith School for Advocacy and Justice. He was 24. Law degree in one hand. Dream in the other. Idris Kadim did not attend. He was not invited. But he sent something. A frame. Simple. Inside was the drawing Rami had made years ago. 2 stick figures. One labeled me. The other Dad. Still apart. But this time, the label under the drawing had changed. Now it read, Truth lives even if names do not. There was no signature. Just silence. But Rami smiled. He handed the frame to the museum wing. Then walked outside to greet the children waiting in line. One girl, maybe 7, asked him, Are you really that boy from the court story? He nodded. Was it scary? He nodded again. But worth it, he said. Every second. And then he knelt down and whispered, If anyone ever tells you to stay quiet when your truth is shaking, tell them Rami said, Scream louder. The wind swept through the hills above the city, bending the tall pines and scattering the golden leaves across the pavement. Rami stood silently at the edge of the marble steps, hands in his coat pockets, watching workers lower the final stone into place. The engraved letters shimmered in the morning light. The Rami Laith Kadim Center for Voice and Justice. No media frenzy. No paparazzi. He had asked for privacy. And for once, the world gave it to him. Inside, the hall still smelled of fresh paint and sawdust. The floors were polished wood. The walls were lined with photos, not of him, but of children, their faces diverse and defiant, smiling, crying, holding signs, holding books, holding hope. Every frame told a story. Stories that had once been erased, denied, hidden, but not anymore. Now they lived here, enshrined not as tragedies, but as triumphs. At the center of the main gallery, in a glass case under soft light, sat a small object. Ordinary, forgotten by most, but not by Rami. A child's blue toothbrush. The very one he had handed to the court when he was just 8 years old. The very one that carried his DNA and forced the truth out of silence. Next to it, a small plaque read, "Let the smallest evidence speak the loudest truths." He didn't spend long in the gallery. He never did. He walked slowly toward his private office, a modest room with a desk, 2 chairs, a shelf of books, and a window overlooking the children's garden. It had been his mother's idea. Layla had said children needed a place where things grew. Today, the garden brimmed with color. Tulips, daisies, a small apple tree, and under it, sitting cross-legged, a girl no older than 10 read a book with her knees tucked to her chest. Rami watched her for a moment, then turned away. On his desk lay a stack of unopened letters. Most were requests, invites to panels, keynote speeches, award ceremonies. He barely glanced at them, but one envelope stood out. Unmarked. No stamp. No address. Just his name, written in plain black ink. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a single folded sheet. Neat handwriting. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve recognition. I only want you to know that the moment I saw you stand in that courtroom, I saw myself. And I hated what I saw. For the first time in my life, I wasn't powerful. I was exposed, not by another man, but by a child I tried to silence. I don't deserve to call you my son, but you are mine, whether I said it or not. You didn't win, just a case. You woke a part of the world that needed to see itself clearly. I hope one day, if we cross paths again, I have the courage you had that day." No name, no signature, but Rami didn't need one. He knew the handwriting. He folded the letter gently and placed it in the drawer where he kept only 2 other things. The court ruling with his name finally printed on it, and the original drawing he made as a boy, 2 stick figures standing apart. He pulled the drawing out now, stared at it. He remembered how it felt to make that, how it felt to want someone so badly to say what he already knew, that he belonged, that he existed. And then, without thinking, he reached for a pen. He drew a line between the 2 stick figures, not touching, just connecting. And underneath it, he wrote a single word. Enough. Later that day, he stood outside with his mother. They watched children run across the grass, some laughing, some quiet, some just watching like he once did. Layla nudged him gently. "Still strange, isn't it?" "What is?" "That you became more than he ever was without ever needing him." Rami looked at her, then back at the garden. "I needed him," he said softly, "just not in the way I thought." Layla didn't respond right away. Instead, she asked, "Do you think he'll ever come here?" Rami shrugged. "Maybe, but that's not the visit I care about." She tilted her head. He nodded toward the children. "They're the ones who matter now." He stepped down the stone stairs and into the grass, walking slowly toward a small group gathered around the garden bench. A boy with a burn scar on his face, a girl with hearing aids, a child with wide, nervous eyes holding a thick file. These were not orphans. They were survivors of erasure, and Rami knew their pain. He sat beside them, not as a director or a public figure, just a witness. They asked him questions, some light, some heavy. One boy, older than the others, finally asked what they all wondered. "When did you stop being angry?" Rami smiled, faintly. "I didn't," he said. "I just stopped letting anger speak louder than healing." Silence settled. Then a tiny hand slipped into his. A child who hadn't spoken the entire visit. No words, just that gesture. Rami looked down at the small fingers curled around his. Tears burned at the corners of his eyes. That night, long after the children had left and the sun dipped behind the trees, Rami stood alone in the library of the center. Floor-to-ceiling shelves surrounded him. Thousands of books, and in one far corner, a digital archive filled with letters from children around the world. He browsed them sometimes, read their words. Some were heartbreaking. Others, filled with joy at finding their own voice after years of silence. But one message caught his eye, a video message from a young girl in Istanbul. The screen flickered, then loaded. Rami, I don't know if you'll ever see this. My name is Alina. I'm 9. My mom says you're the reason I can finally say who my father is, even if he never says it back. I watched your video from school. When you said we don't need permission to exist, I started sleeping with the light off again. She grinned, missing 2 front teeth. If you're ever in Turkey, I'll bake you cookies. Thank you. The screen went dark. Rami smiled, wiped his eyes, and whispered, "That's more than enough." The next morning, he wrote a new quote for the main hallway of the center. He printed it, framed it, and hung it beside the others. We are not made of blood alone. We're made of memory, of voice, of the choice to stand when others tell us to disappear. He stepped back, read it again, and then he left the building, walking slowly toward the garden as the sun rose behind him, casting long shadows that danced beside him in the wind. He was still that boy in the courtroom, still the child with the drawing. But now he was also the echo, the ripple, the proof that one voice, even trembling, can crack the silence of giants, and that sometimes being denied doesn't make you smaller. It makes you stronger.